My parents left me twice. Now they're calling me desperate after Grandpa pulled his investment from Dad's business. I'm 20 now, but everything changed on my 18th birthday. Instead of celebrating like normal parents would, mine hit me with an ultimatum. You need to start paying rent if you want to keep living here. I stared at them, trying to process the unexpected demand. It felt more like a punishment than a rite of passage. Why now? Why are you doing this? I asked, frustration bubbling in my voice. Because it's time you learn responsibility, my mom replied, her tone cold and detached. You're not a child anymore. Our relationship was already complicated. I'd lived with my grandparents from ages 3 to 10 before my parents suddenly decided to take me back. We never really bonded after that. My mom teaches high school English, and my dad works in marketing, so they make decent money. But I always felt like they resented spending any of it on me, like taking care of their own kid was just an obligation. They'd send some money to my grandparents and call it my alimony, but it wasn't enough to cover everything. That's why I started working at an office supply store in high school. The internship paid okay, and I managed to save up a bit while balancing school. When they dropped the rent bomb, something in me snapped. You can't be serious, I muttered, half laughing in disbelief. We're completely serious, my dad said, not even looking up from his phone. And it's not negotiable. In a burst of anger, I packed my stuff and left for a friend's house. They didn't even try to stop me. Looking back, I didn't have nearly enough savings to properly move out, but I figured I could scrape by for a few months with roommates somewhere cheap. I'd only saved that money as an emergency fund. Never thought I'd need it so soon. My friend generously let me crash with him until I could figure something out, or start college in the fall. Thankfully, my maternal grandparents had set up a college fund that my parents couldn't touch. My dad's parents passed away when he was young. I blocked my parents' numbers right after leaving. The whole thing hurt too much. Sure, they weren't legally required to house me anymore, but I expected at least some basic parental support until I could get on my feet. 4 days later, my grandparents called asking me to visit. They had no idea what happened. When I told them everything, they were furious. This wasn't the first time they'd seen my parents' emotional neglect, but demanding rent from their teenage kid was a new low. They immediately offered to let me move back in with them. Come live with us. Despite his Parkinson's, his voice was steady and full of warmth. You'll always have a home here. I hesitated. I appreciate it, but I can't, I said softly. I don't want to be a burden. Nonsense, my grandma said firmly. But I stood my ground. They already had enough to deal with, and I didn't want to add to their stress. My grandparents understood my decision, but assured me of their support. Their kindness was a stark contrast to my parents' behavior. I visited them weekly while searching for apartments and preparing for college. As weeks passed, I focused on finding a cheap apartment and preparing for college. One day, my dad's number popped up on my phone, the only one I hadn't blocked. Against my better judgment, I answered. We need to talk, he said. His tone was curt. Your grandparents pulled out of investing in my business, and it's your fault. Excuse me? I replied, stunned. You told them about the rent thing, didn't you? He accused. Now they're refusing to invest, and my whole plan is falling apart. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. That's not my problem, I said coldly. It is your problem, my mom interjected. This is your father's dream. You could at least talk to your grandparents and convince them to reconsider. I laughed bitterly. You mean the grandparents who practically raised me? The ones you've been taking money from for years? No thanks. My mom's voice cracked. You're being so ungrateful, she said. We've done everything for you. Everything? I snapped. You've done the bare minimum and acted like it was charity. Don't pretend this is about me. This is about your business and your money. I hung up, seething. That night, I called my grandparents to update them. You have nothing to feel guilty about, my grandma reassured me. We've already decided not to invest. It's not just about what they did to you. Your father's business record speaks for itself. Their words eased my guilt. But I still dreaded breaking the news to my parents. When I finally called them, my mom sounded hopeful. I told her flatly, I'm not going to convince my grandparents to invest. She tried to argue, but I cut her off. You treated me like a burden my whole life, I said. I don't owe you anything, my father exploded. You're a selfish, ungrateful brat, he yelled. You've brought nothing but shame to this family. I stayed calm. You should be ashamed, not me, I replied. You didn't raise me. My grandparents did. After I hung up, I broke down and called my grandparents. Through tears, I recounted the conversation. We're proud of you, my grandpa said. You've shown more maturity than they ever have. A few days later, my grandparents took to social media and posted a detailed message exposing my parents' behavior. The post quickly went viral among our relatives and family friends. In it, they explained how my parents had relied on their financial help for years, just to make ends meet when I was 11, yet showed no gratitude for the support. Instead, my parents had the audacity to mistreat me and act like I was a burden, even though their own parents had never treated them that way. It also came to light that the house my parents lived in wasn't even theirs. It belonged to a friend of my grandparents, who had allowed them to live there at a reduced rent, thanks to my grandfather's connection. My parents' hypocrisy was glaring. They accused me of taking advantage of them financially, yet they had done the exact same thing to my grandparents, even as full-grown adults with a child to care for. Worse still, I learned that my parents had often used me as an excuse to borrow large sums of money from my grandparents when I came back to live with them. They claimed that raising me required more resources and repeatedly asked for financial support. My grandparents, knowing they were being taken advantage of, still gave willingly because they genuinely cared about me. My grandparents were heartbroken. They realized that my mother wasn't capable of extending the same love and support to her own son, and prioritized her husband's interests over mine. They didn't hold back in the post, calling out my father as a failure from the time I was a child. They shared how he'd already attempted and failed at starting 2 businesses when I was younger, leaving my grandparents to bail him out and cover his debts. It finally made sense why my grandparents were so hesitant to invest in my father's latest business venture. They'd seen this pattern before and weren't willing to go through it again. Honestly, I can't blame them. It's completely fair. They have no gratitude, the post read. We refuse to enable their selfishness any longer. The fallout was immediate. Relatives cut ties with my parents, shocked by the revelations. My parents tried to fight back, even filing a defamation lawsuit, but my grandparents stood firm. One evening, I visited my grandparents and found them in good spirits. We've dealt with people like your parents before, my grandma said, handing me a cup of tea. They'll never change, but that doesn't mean we have to put up with it. As for my parents, they've gone silent. I've moved forward, focusing on college and building a life on my terms. My grandparents' unwavering support has reminded me of what family truly means, not just shared blood, but shared love and respect. Over the next few months, I settled into a routine. College kept me busy, and I found a part-time job to help with expenses. Ashley and Matt remained my closest confidants. You're doing great, Ashley said one evening over coffee. You've come so far. I couldn't have done it without you, I replied. Their encouragement, along with my grandparents' love, gave me the strength to keep going. One day, I received an unexpected message from my dad. Let's talk, it read. Curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop. When I arrived, my mom's eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. We're sorry, she said softly. We made mistakes? Mistakes? I repeated. You made choices. Choices that hurt me. We know, my dad admitted, and we want to fix it. I stared at them, searching for sincerity. This isn't something you can fix overnight, I said. It'll take time, if it's even possible. They nodded, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of remorse. While I wasn't ready to forgive, I realized this was a step toward healing. For them, and for me. My journey wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like I was heading in the right direction. Looking back, I've realized that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even if it means going against your own parents. Along the way, you'll find that there are people who will always have your back and support you no matter what. So, don't be afraid to stand your ground and fight for what you deserve.